The views and opinions expressed here on Wrestling Wind Down are those of the host and do not necessarily reflect the official policy or position of any other agency, organization, employer, or company. What's up, guys? It's Lo, and you are tuned in to Wrestling Wind Down, a female-founded and hosted podcast dedicated to professional wrestling and our favorite adult beverage. After some unexpected moves within WWE recently, many wrestling fans are left to reevaluate their wrestling fandom. I am joined by Swinton of Maps and Graps and the newest writer at Sports Illustrated to spill the wine on wrestling alternatives. From Japan to Mexico, mainstream alternatives like AEW and TNA, as well as indie gyms across the country, we are diving into options that can give you a whole new perspective on professional wrestling. There's a whole world of wrestling waiting to be explored, and we have your Baddie guide ready to go. So grab your favorite glass of bubbly. We're going in for the 3 count. We are back with another episode of Wrestling Wind Down, and in this episode, this is a little bit different than what we usually put out. People are kind of wondering nowadays, what is the alternative to WWE? As we know, WWE brought back Brock Lesnar, who is involved in a lawsuit he has named a multitude of times. And a lot of people are wondering, where does this leave my wrestling fandom? And I'm joined by Miss Lyric Swinton of Maps and Graps and the newest writer at Sports Illustrated, because she knows so much about wrestling alternatives. So I am so excited to have Lyric here. It's been about a year since she's been on the show. Welcome back to Wrestling Wind Down.
Thank you for having me. It's a pleasure as always.
Sports Illustrated, girl, is big. We need to talk about this. Tell me how your time at Sports Illustrated has been so far.
It's been good writing for The Takedown. Yeah, it's all very crazy to me I really started like in the wrestling creation space about 2.5 years ago. And I don't think I really had a plan at all of like where everything was supposed to go. Like I had a few goals and I checked those off pretty quickly of like things. I was like, I want to cover a pay-per-view. I want to cover a scrum. I want to go to Japan. I did all of that stuff like within like my first year. And like, I kind of felt at the end of like that 2-year mark, I was like, I need to create new goals for myself. And I knew I wanted to write for bigger publications. PWI was a big step for me. Being on like Women's 250 committee last year was huge. And I just got in contact like with the right people about like the Takedown and sent over like my resume and everything. And like, they liked my stuff. And so it's just been crazy. And it's something that I don't take for granted because like not a lot of women at all get opportunities in wrestling to write and produce for major publications. And so I try not to treat it differently than I've approached any of my other work. Actually, I make that a point to not treat it differently. I always put so much effort into my work, even when it was like for free or it was like, on my Medium account or if it was just on like one of my friends' blogs. And so like now that I've created that discipline for myself, I look at everything the exact same with the same like intention to produce the highest quality that I can possibly manage. And so that's just how I try to approach it. It's a bigger platform, but it's the same me.
Looking back from when you first started watching wrestling to now, like, do you think that you can believe it?
No, not at all. No. And it's so funny because like I was supposed to get into wrestling as far as really give this an effort years ago. Like that's why I went to college. Like my degrees in sport and entertainment management. And I got so discouraged around that time. And so I just ended up doing other stuff. So it wasn't until I was like 25 when I really gave things like a real shot. Like if you had told me, like little girl me, that I would be doing the things that I'm doing, I would have never believed you. I would have wanted to, of course, but I would have never, ever believed you.
Well, I'm so proud of you. It's been so amazing to see your growth, and other people are starting to learn about it now on a wider scale. And I think you are so deserving of it because you truly do work hard. I've seen it. I've seen you up at 2 a.m. in the morning, girl, watching these pay-per-views. Like,
yeah, it's a lot. I'm still tired myself. I'm always tired, especially right now during tournament season. I am always tired. I have been napping like crazy. I'm so excited for things to calm down a little bit. I'm drowning, but it's fun. It's a privilege. It really is a privilege, truly.
Before we dive in the episode, I just wanted to give a quick merch update. We dropped our Once Upon a Wrestling Baddie, modeled by the ladies of Tag Team Twinning, as well as Michaela Mortimer of Micmacs. If you want to check out that collection, you can go on shop.wrestlingwinedownlv.com, and we will have our custom Bad Bitches 4, so you could insert a name that's non-trademarked in there. We will be having those up shortly as well, so keep an eye out on our socials at WWDCAST. Let's get into the episode. Wrestling alternatives. Like I mentioned in the intro, I think a lot of people right now are at this place where they don't necessarily know where they want to go in their fandom right now. A lot of people are not feeling comfortable watching the WWE products. Some feel comfortable, but they don't really want to talk about it on social media. Or you have people that have kind of just continued watching as normal. Have you seen this impact on your timeline as well? Is it a mix of people? Is it mostly people that are like, I'm not watching it or wasn't watching it to begin with? What does that look like for you?
Yeah, so my TL looks a little bit different than a lot of folks because like my stuff is like really curated mostly to alternative wrestling outside of like a lot of WWE stuff. I'll be honest, I have like WWE accounts muted. Not even like from a hate perspective, it's just like it's so much stuff to where like I need to be able to see the stuff that I need to see from like these small Japanese organization stuff, and like it'd just be too much. So, but what I have noticed is that a lot of the people I was following either weren't following the product to start with, or like they were only loosely following it. I've seen a lot of people like flat out stop, or at least they weren't like live tweeting Raw. Like I remember like on Monday, like I maybe saw like 2 to 3 people, you know, on my timeline, period. And so who knows? I will say wrestling fans are fickle, and 1 week isn't really like going to tell who's going to do what, right?
Mm-hmm.
But I definitely have seen people say that they are stopping. We shall still see. Yeah, but I have seen it. I have seen the discourse.
You know, I've seen a lot of people saying, well, I'm going to watch AEW or I'm going to watch something else. So I know there's a handful of people that want to explore other promotions and types of wrestling at this time because they still have that passion for wrestling, but they're not tuned into mainstream WWE products. I know you started watching wrestling. Were you watching WWE at first, or were you watching other promotions? And if you were watching WWE, what made you personally branch out?
Oh, I grew up like a hardcore WWE fan.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, truly, it was everything to where like I still have like my first wrestling t-shirts, this real battered Batista shirt. Like it's gray now. It used to be black, but like it's gray now because it's been washed many times. It's so small. Like I used to have like the chain gang headband.
Hold up now. You might get some money for that now.
No, I can't find them. I can't find them. Like there's literally like a screenshot of me at a show one time screaming in an AJ Styles shirt. Like it was crazy. But I say this as somebody I didn't really find out any alternatives until I would say like 1 or 2 years into like my fandom. So I started watching wrestling in 2006. 2007, I discovered TNA. And so TNA on Spike was really like my first alternative. I loved TNA at that time. Like the Knockouts division was really special to me. I loved the X division. I loved the tag division. But when TNA like started hopping from like network to network, it was really hard to like stay into it. And then like I was mostly just WWE. Then I kind of like fell out of WWE main roster by the time like I got into high school. But when Black and Gold NXT started, that was really what hooked me. So like I really stopped watching like main roster altogether. And so I just got like a network subscription. I was just watching NXT. Once 4 Horsewomen get called up to like main roster, that's when I started watching main roster again. But like I was so busy in college, I was rarely even home in time to even watch like Raw or SmackDown. And like here's the thing, I knew certain things were happening at the time. Like I knew like Ring of Honor and New Japan were getting popular and everything. I just didn't have any time. Like I genuinely didn't have anytime. Like I was this super involved student leader on campus. I couldn't even watch WWE barely at that point outside of like a few pay-per-views. So like I sure didn't have time to watch like more niche stuff. But like I was still seeing like Bullet Club and Elite stuff and Hot Topic and stuff. Like I knew like things were happening. And I was hearing about like Kenny and all these people. And so AEW started in my tail end of my college years. I was a junior. No, All In happens during that. So I remember I watched All In. Crazy enough at the big time. I was a huge Cody fan. Like I grew up watching Cody since the Legacy days. So I watched All In, like I fell in love with it. AEW gets launched in 2019. which was my heading into my senior year of college. And so like watched all their first pay-per-views and stuff. And I liked the product, but it was one of those things I was still like super busy. So I couldn't really commit. But I don't get fully into like hardcore every week religiously watching like a non-WWE product or WWE even until 2022. Because I graduated, I just left a super time-consuming job. I've been working a campaign, so like I was working like 18-hour days all the time. And so suddenly I have all this time on my hands. AEW does their first show in South Carolina. And so that was my first time going in person. And it's funny because like Raw had been in town the month before and they came on my birthday. And like I had a really good time, but how do I say this? Like sometimes I feel like when you go to like a WWE taping, especially like a TV taping, it feels like you're just a bystander for a show, almost like a, it's
like a live audience type of thing.
Correct. Yes.
Yeah.
Right? And so even like when it's on commercial, everybody like damn near stops wrestling and everything. Like it's just like, don't get me wrong, it was fun. It kind of like felt like when the circus comes to town, how everybody buys a ticket, you know, and I don't mean that like I don't mean that in a shady way, but I mean it's like for a casual fandom, right? Like even if you're not really watching. Like, I know people who, like, they might not regularly watch week to week, but, like, okay, WWE comes in town. Oh, we're going to go in a show, you know, buy a few beers. We're going to have a good time. Like, even, like, my brother came with me because, like, he doesn't even really watch wrestling. It was just like, okay, it's something fun to do. But, like, does that mean that you're going to watch Raw next week? You know, probably not. But then, like, Dynamite came to town. That was the first time they came to South Carolina. And I made the decision last minute to go. Genuinely last minute, like, bought the ticket same day. Even though, like, the crowd was small, it felt like being a part of the show, like it's a completely different fan experience. I would say like being around like hardcore fans, and like I really enjoyed it. Like I really enjoyed it. And so I started watching regularly, and then the first Forbidden Door happened, and I'm like, okay, this is the coolest thing that's ever happened, ever happened. The thing that really led me to like really alternative wrestling was depression. So that year, all of my friends, for the most part, like the ones who were younger than me, everybody, they graduated from school, and like, you know, I live in a college town. So like everybody else, like they just come here for school, you know? So like everybody moved. All my friends moved away. I was going through a lot of personal stuff at the time. And like I said, I just left a super time consuming job. I am suddenly with so much time on my hands, and I was really depressed and alone at that time. And so reconnecting with wrestling, I would just sit in a dark room for days and weeks and months at a time and just watch Japanese wrestling over and over again. And I started going into like, I got a New Japan World subscription, but even outside of that, like on YouTube, I started watching like old All Japan stuff and like all this other stuff. And like, I just fell in love with it. And the rest is history. Honestly, that's really how I got into like other forms of wrestling. And then it just keeps snowballing. And I found out about more stuff. Me, I can't be a casual fan of anything. I have to be super obsessed about it.
It goes down.
You know, I have to know everything. And so like, I'm watching like hours of full G1 tournaments, all like, you know, like I hate FOMO. And so, yeah, that's really how it ends up snowballing from there.
I want to discuss promotions that maybe people can look into if they're like, you know what, I'm taking a break from WWE, I'm done with WWE, or maybe you still watch WWE, but you want to start watching more. So I went through and I looked at some of the different promotions that are currently out there. And obviously there's a bunch, but we're going to cover most of the ones that people are kind of aware of, maybe some that you might not be aware of. And we're just going to lay it out. And from there, people can decide, hey, you know, I want to look into Joshi. I want to look more into AEW. And we hope that this is kind of like your starting guide to figuring out what your wrestling fandom looks like at this point. So we're going to start with Joshi wrestling, Japanese wrestling. I am not familiar. I know you are very familiar. So I'm going to let you take the driver's seat. I'm going to be the passenger princess. Please tell us about Joshi wrestling. What are some key promotions, some key wrestlers, matches, eras that have stood out to you while you've watched?
Obviously, most people are going to immediately point you to 90s All Japan women's wrestling, probably the pinnacle of wrestling as a whole, not just women's wrestling period. Very little even comes close to it. The Manami Toyotas, Aja Kong, Akira Hokuto, Bull Nakano, those just giants in our sport. And so A lot of that is available on YouTube. You can really kind of start there. Now, the modern Joshi style has continued to evolve, but I think that it's still extremely high quality. And the thing about the Japanese scene is that it's very gendered in the sense of there's promotions that are specifically for women, and then there's our promotion that are specifically for men, and there are multiple of each. Obviously, the biggest is easily Stardom. Stardom is the second biggest promotion in Japan, period, and they just happen to be a women's promotion. So they are the second largest behind New Japan Pro Wrestling, and they're currently doing great business right now. They're in their 5-star Grand Prix tournament, which is their round robin tournament. So if you're familiar with like the Continental Classic in AEW, same type system there, but much more rigorous. Right now they have 32 participants. But yeah, Stardom is really awesome. But truly for me personally, if you really want to get in, I say get a Wrestle Universe subscription. And let me tell you why. For $8 and about 50 cents a month with Wrestle Universe, you get Tokyo Joshi Pro Wrestling, you get Pro Wrestling Noah, DDT, Marigold, which is a Joshi promotion, Marvelous, which is a Joshi promotion, Sendai Girls, which is a Joshi promotion, and honestly, my current favorite, like I would say, like out of the Joshi promotions right now, you get Michinoku Pro, 01, all that, $8.50. I mean, that is
crazy
value. Like when I say that is a steal, that is a steal.
And I must add, a lot of people are upset at WWE because they're moving over to ESPN for their pay-per-views, and it's going to be like $30 or something like that. But they're also going to keep their backlog on Peacock for now. So you're looking at spending maybe, let's say there's 2 pay-per-views in a month or 1. It depends on how they do NXT. You could spend close to $100 a month on watching wrestling. And that's if you don't watch AEW. If you watch AEW, And
here's the thing. I'm going to be honest with you. Getting into alternative wrestling, it is a black hole. Because once you really start, it's going to be hard to stop. It is expensive, I'm going to be honest. But being a wrestling fan is expensive. If you knew the money that I shell out monthly, not even in a year, on professional wrestling, not even including the trips, oh my God. But I am also hardcore. I covered this, so don't use me as like a
totem pole. Yeah.
But it's expensive. It's expensive. And I'll honestly too, it's something like you do have to be conscious. Being a wrestling fan, especially a hardcore wrestling fan, it's an investment, and I think that is something that WWE has always had. Not always had, but especially since the streaming era, they had that price point, right? Like, for $4.99 on Peacock, you get everything. Everything else on top of that is extra. But now that's starting to change, right? And so I do think that was their major hook of being able to say hey, this is accessible. The accessibility has now been threatened. But if you want to stay a professional wrestling fan, guess what? Those $4.99 days are over. They're just not happening again. You just got to get comfortable with that. But I do think Wrestle Universe is an amazing place to start. Stardom World, that has Stardom shows and all their backlogs. And that's about $8.99. I think Saya Kamatani is somebody to really watch right now. She is the current World Stardom champion and probably one of the biggest draws in Japan right now, who's just become a major star. She's always on television. She's always doing something. She is just a huge star with huge star power. Her entrance at All-Star Grand Queendom this year went viral on Twitter, and it's her with this flag and her hair blowing in the wind. It's just aura. And I think also too what I love about Japanese wrestling, and I think what a lot of people might love about WWE is the pageantry of it all. People love big entrances and big costumes and that type of thing. But Japanese wrestling, in my opinion, I think does that better than anywhere else. You want to see big coats and extravagant gears. And now here's the thing, you might not see as big of these big LED display boards and stuff like that. But the aura and the presentation is so succinct to where you don't even need that stuff because it's real aura. It's real tangible. Truly, the best entrances and stuff. And I say this as somebody who grew up watching WWE, the best entrances and pageantry I've ever seen has 9 times out of 10 always come from Japanese wrestling.
I will say during Mania, I forget who it was. Like, I don't know the group name, but it was at a GCW show. It was one of those ones that was 11:30 at night. These three female wrestlers came out. They did a whole dance routine before they got to the ring. I was like,
no, yeah, TJPW is like really big on idol culture. I mean, every Japanese women's promotion has some, I think, remnant of like the idol culture, but like, yes, they're doing a full show for you.
I love that.
Shout out to TJPW. Did 2,500 people in the US, for a Joshi women's wrestling show during All In weekend in Dallas. That is huge. That's bigger than some people are doing in Japan. And that's just the truth. Like, they have really found their niche. They're a really good promotion to get into. Miyu Watanabe, I think, is incredible. There's so many amazing stars. If you're familiar with Yuka Sakazaki, she comes from TJPW as well. Miyu Yamashita, there's several people who will make guest appearances over there. Willow wrestled there earlier this year. Billy Starks recently wrestled over there. And so many people like to get invested in. On the Joshi side, I love Sendai Girls. I think that if you're familiar with Meiko Satomura, she runs that promotion. She retired earlier this year, but she actually owns and runs that promotion. And they have a very small roster, but they bring in a lot of freelancers. And for women's tag team wrestling specifically, you're not going to find anything better than that. Also, there's the freelancer game, which is Sari, who was in NXT SRA, went back to Japan, really reinvented herself. She now hosts her own shows that sell out immediately every time she does them. And she freelances, so she's not beholden to any one company. She spent a lot of time in Marigold when they were first launching, defeated Julia to become the first, world champion over there before Julia ends up leaving for WWE. Did everything that there was to do in Marigold. She's now over in Stardom as the IWGP Women's Champion, in addition to freelancing. Like, there's so much autonomy, like seeing women be in charge of their careers, take their career by the horns and say, like, I'm going to wrestle here, 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 and add value wherever I go. And also, if you just kind of like don't want to commit to the actual wrestling yet, and you just kind of want to just, how do I say it? Like, get a feel for the culture. Queen of Villains on Netflix. It is an amazing series, like an actual series, not a documentary, but it is based on a true story on the history of 80s All Japan women's wrestling. And it's about the story of Dump Matsumoto and the Crush Gals and the beginnings of how Japanese women's wrestling really came to power, starting in the 70s with Beauty Pair, then eventually how it evolves. And it's just amazing. The sets, the costumes, everything is absolutely perfect. And I think that you should watch it with subtitles because I feel like it gives like the more authentic experience. But if you're not a person who's big on subtitles, don't worry about it. There's several people from wrestling doing the dubbing. Nikki Bella, I think, does some of the voices, and Alexa Bliss, I think, did some of like the English voices. So there's some familiar voices in there too. You could start with Queen of Villains. It's about, I think, a 6-episode limited series. And it's absolutely fantastic. And guess what? We deserve mainstream wrestling content that isn't the 87th Who Killed WCW documentary. We deserve that. There's so much more to wrestling than Who Killed WCW.
Amen. Let's look into New Japan Pro Wrestling. So we know that New Japan has a yearly event with AEW called Forbidden Door that has brought in a lot of people to look at what New Japan is, but they run year round. They have incredible wrestlers over there doing their thing. They have events within the States as well. Tell us a little bit about New Japan, what we should keep an eye out for, maybe some of your favorite matches and eras over there, and maybe even some people that we have seen in the company that have transitioned on to like AEW, WWE, etc.
So New Japan's probably in addition to AEW, probably the promotion I follow the most. The one I first got into. I have this beautiful Tanahashi chibi that I bought. Listen, so it's currently G1 season, which is the most prestigious tournament in professional wrestling. Also a round robin tournament that's currently happening right now. It's about to wrap up over the next couple weeks. And so the winner of that typically challenges for the IWGP World Heavyweight Championship. Sometimes they'll challenge for an earlier date, but typically it's at the Tokyo Dome. Yearly January 4th show, which is Wrestle Kingdom. I've been before. It's the greatest thing ever. It's amazing. But New Japan, I think it's definitely in a transitional period. A lot of stars that you are familiar with have gone on to other places. Kenny Omega, Kazuchika Okada, AJ Styles. Who else? Shibata.
Finn Balor.
All the Tongas. Tama Tonga, Hikuleo, Tongaloa, Jeff Cobb. Who else has made the jump? Jay White.
Oh, yes, Jay White.
And even people who weren't like full-time members of the roster, so many people have wrestled in New Japan, like Hangman Page has done a G1. The Young Bucks were in New Japan for a while. Adam Cole, Takeshita is a 3-contract athlete between New Japan, DDT, and AEW. He's actually insane. Kyle Fletcher was in New Japan with Mark Davis as Aussie Open. Will Ospreay, of course, was in New Japan for a very long time. So a lot of people have gone on. So they're really in a rebuilding stage right now. Hiroshi Tanahashi, who's also the president, he is in his retirement tour. So he will retire on January 4th, 2026 at the Tokyo Dome at Wrestle Kingdom 20. And so that's going to be really huge. And so part of his retirement tour, he is doing his record 23rd G1 Climax tournament, which is, we'll probably never see anything like it again. And he recently reached 100 G1 Climax wins, which we'll also probably never see.
Wow.
We'll never see that record again. In the sense of wrestling has changed so much and there's so many different places. Very few people are even staying with a promotion that long to, be able to do that many tournaments. He's the ace for a reason. It's been very emotional. So I think that's one of the huge stories. He'll obviously be in action at Forbidden Door. And also there's this young generation that's currently bubbling up. They have 3 Musketeers. And so every era, there's typically 3 Musketeers named. It all started in the 90s with Masahiro Chono, Shinya Hashimoto, and Kaiji Muto. Those were the original 3 Musketeers in New Japan. Then once we get to the 2000s, it was Shinsuke Nakamura, who you all know, Hiroshi Tanahashi, and Katsuyori Shibata. And the Reiwa era 3 Musketeers are Yota Tsuji, Shota Umino, and Rin Narita. And so those guys are part of the young generation. There's also a few more. There's Ryohei Oiwa, Yuya Uemura, who also did his excursion in TNA, if anybody remembers. Joya.
Yes.
Joe Hendry. Wrestling is such a small world. It really is a very small world. Callum Newman, Bolton Oleg. I think that those are, most of the young guys right now. And then there's some other top stars, Gabe Kidd, who you've seen, David Finley, the son of Fit Finley. He's been on AEW TV a few times. Hiroki Goto, who is currently injured right now, but he's been probably the biggest star of New Japan this year. He challenged for the IWGP Championship over the course of 20 years. He challenged 9 times and won it on the last try. And
whoa, okay.
Special. It was the
Holy.
We cried. I cried. Everybody cried. It was amazing. He won the championship earlier this year. It was a beautiful moment, just absolutely beautiful. It's funny. So he is of the same era. Him and Katsuyori Shibata are best friends, and they went to high school together. And so I was really hoping that they wrestled at Forbidden Door because that was going to be really cool. But we shall see. Goto, there's Taichi, who I think has one of the coolest entrances ever. He comes out with a microphone. He has tearaway pants. He rips off in the middle of the match, and he's just a fantastic wrestler. They have Zack Sabre Jr., the current IWGP World Heavyweight Champion. He is the second foreigner to ever win the G1 Climax tournament after Kenny Omega, and he is the first British wrestler to ever win it. He's currently on his second reign as IWGP World Heavyweight Champion. There's also Shingo Takagi, who's had a very great career in New Japan and also Dragon Gate Wrestling, where he originally started. There's a huge heel faction. It's called House of Torture. They are the devil. Nothing good comes from House of Torture. Hope everybody involved has a terrible day. Yeah. That's really kind of like New Japan in a nutshell. All of their stuff is available on New Japan World, and they have all their entire back library. Listen, the New Japan library is unmatched. You want to see prime Kenny Omega, prime Kazuchika Okada, prime Shinsuke Nakamura, prime AJ Styles, the best stuff work of any of these people's career. Finn Balor as well, when he was Prince Devitt. And also to get an idea of how big these people actually were. Like sometimes your favorite wrestlers, they're good or they're okay with what they're doing on TV now. But in New Japan, they were gods. I think that's also one thing that I really love too about like Japanese wrestling, but New Japan, the presentation of the wrestling. It feels like almost straight out of an anime. It feels like the Clash of Titans. If you watch like the Omega Okada original matches, they play like movies. They genuinely play like movies. These epics, these 40 to 60 minute epics of like, they play like movies. Like even Osprey Omega from the Tokyo Dome 2 years ago, nothing like it. Nothing quite like it. There's other promotions as well who are able to produce that occasionally. I think Pro Wrestling Noah comes to mind. And also Pro Wrestling Noah has the best production out of any company anywhere, period. Seriously. Their camera quality, the way that they film entrances, the most breathtaking presentation you've ever seen in your life. They use a Beamer. WWE also uses a Beamer, but not like Noah. But Pro Wrestling Noah, just the production is just absolutely gorgeous. I still don't know how they do it, but it's incredible.
All Elite Wrestling, also known as AEW and Ring of Honor, that is our mainstream alternative. We're jumping over to our mainstream stuff. We will end with our independents, but AEW is, in most people's opinions, the direct competitor for WWE. Yes. So AEW, they have Dynamite, they have monthly pay-per-views, they have Collision on Saturdays, but then they also have Ring of Honor under their umbrella. So Ring of Honor does events as well. You know everything about AEW. I know a lot about AEW. Let's just talk about it. You can either be a casual fan of wrestling, you could be a diehard fan of wrestling. I feel like you can find your place in AEW. And I feel like if you miss a week or two, it's not really that hard to figure out, okay, what happened in between that time. Now, compared to WWE, if you miss a week or two, you might miss John Cena completely reinvigorating himself from a heel to a face again. And then you're all confused. You got to go back and watch 5,000 clips, right? But with AEW, I feel like they do a good job of keeping the story kind of maintained. So if you do miss something, it's not huge to the point where it's like, okay, what the hell happened?
Yeah, AEW, it's so interesting. Like, it's such a melting pot of so many different styles of wrestling. There's generally something for everybody. Mm-hmm. And I think like they just do things so much differently. And obviously there's room for growth in a lot of things. Yes. But they have really done a really good job, I would say, this year of kind of like tightening up the ship on a lot of things that I think were really loose ends. And I think like they just do different stuff. Like one thing that comes to mind is Grand Slam Mexico this year. Being able to produce television from Arena Mexico, the cathedral of professional wrestling. You'll probably never see anything like that anywhere else. You'll and I think just doing it, opening up with Hangman Page speaking to the crowd in Spanish, and, the moment with Mystico, and the crowd serenading him with his song of, wow, Mercedes winning 6 belts, and Toni Storm taking her out as the woman in red, Carmen Sandiego. It's so many interesting clashes. And I also want to say, shout out to CMLL. If you're interested in Lucha, investing in CMLL, they have different tiers on their YouTube. It's worth it. I've recently subscribed to their highest tier. I've been watching CMLL from Arena Mexico on Friday night. I haven't regretted it whatsoever. Mind-boggling stuff that they're doing over there. Wow. Just athleticism. But the pageantry, it goes back to the pageantry, like the masks, the lore. Like, I love things that feel like I can sink my teeth into it. Like it's, it's always something beneath the surface. And I think AEW is good like that. And one thing that I feel that has really helped as an AEW fan is other fans. Like, there are so many fans who have taken times out of their busy schedule and their busy lives to put together video essays and recaps and stuff on YouTube of, hey, if you want to get into AEW, I have put together this entire rivalry for you, or this entire story. A lot of times it's, for most people, when they're getting into, they always say, look at Hangman. He's the main character, and so follow his story, the story of the Elite. Shout out to Drop Mick Wrestling. I think has done so many of those, but also AEW has gotten into it too. They have these things called AEW timelines where they'll put 8 hours worth of footage of like from beginning to end of like, of a story,
I think they recently just did that for Christian and Nick Wayne, if I remember correctly. Yeah.
For the patriarchy. And I think like that is just so cool, because the thing is AEW fans just always want more, right? Like I feel like they want to know everything, and that's part of just being a hardcore fan, like, hardcore wrestling fan, because there's always so much to know, and there's always something new to find out. And so I think it's allowed to be as uninvolved or as involved as you would like to be. If you just want to watch this on TV and go on about your day, you can do that. If you want to watch it on TV and then proceed to go obsess on the internet, you can also do that too. So I think that that's awesome. I think that there's an emphasis on tag team wrestling. I think that there's a emphasis on like, I love the all-star tags. And I truly believe that this is the best women's division in the world, as far from a perspective of like the talent that they have lined up. Everybody is so different and they bring different things to the table. Some of these people are classic wrestlers, they leave it between the ropes and they're going to have just some incredible wrestling matches. And some of these girls, they get down. They are going to have flat out death matches with light tubes and thumbtacks, and they're going to bleed, and it's going to be awesome. Everybody has these different styles. Some of it, they come from the Joshi style. So it's really hard. And it's these headbutts that make you think somebody's going to die. And it's really cool. And then you have people who are incredible characters. This Athena Tony Storm feud is a great example of that, of like these over the top minion overlord and timeless, going head to head. And then you'll have somebody like Mercedes, who was kind of the only person I can really compare to her to is kind of like the Kenny Omega of this person who's currently in this era, belt collector. And they are kind of like the hinge point for these interpromotional relationships. And so constantly have competitors coming in from all over the world to come wrestle her. She's going out to wrestle them, and which is offering even more diversity to go against everything you were conditioned to believe that wrestling was supposed to be. I think that is super fascinating. And even as somebody who's watched AEW since the beginning, watching these women continue to build their own brand and watching them continue to grow and figure out, what they want to do and go into other ventures. And like so many of them are like really expanding and branching off. And also a lot of them are wrestling in other places, Yeah. Chris Statlander is currently like Pro Wrestling Eve international champion, which is really cool. And Willow Nightingale wrestles frequently everywhere, including Japan and indies from time to time. Athena is hosting her own show. MPX, who runs the world in Texas, is an all women's wrestling show. That's going to be absolutely incredible. You have, Mercedes is always showing up somewhere else. Megan Bain is showing up in different places. She came from Stardom. Queen Aminata is just a queen. I don't know another way to say it. Thekla came over from Stardom, has been absolutely killing it since she came over. There's just so many different people to like get invested in, and you just have to be willing to kind of like open yourself up to it. Like I haven't been this invested in like a women's roster probably since like NXT 4 Horsewomen. Like honestly, like everybody is just so different and brings something different to the table. They don't always get the time that they deserve, but honestly,
right, I do agree with that.
Truly, in American women's wrestling, nobody's getting the time they deserve to be proud. But the way that they're maximizing these minutes is incredible. And then I think like there's so many different stars to get invested in, even on the men's side. Like I think AEW has a really strong core of young stars of, under 35. You have at the top, you have Hangman Page, Swerve Strickland, and Will Ospreay. Those are kind of like, I would say like the big three guys. And then directly underneath them, you'll have Bandito, Kyle Fletcher, Konosuke Takeshita. And then you'll have like your vets who are still producing: John Moxley, Samoa Joe, Kenny Omega, and Bryan Danielson. Those are kind of like your GOAT tier wrestlers and timers at this point. You have Okada, who is, it's so funny because Okada's like technically young, but he's accomplished so much to where if he just gets grouped in with like them too, because he's not like y'all. He's just not like y'all. He is an OG at this point. There's other people who I think are, vets who are getting second chances at their careers, like Shibata, who's been absolutely incredible. One of my favorite wrestlers. And you have like Hobbs, trio champions, the Young Bucks, who I think are the best tag team like ever. You know, you have other vets like the Hurt Syndicate over there. You have Adam Copeland, Christian. It's really a smorgasbord of whatever you want, like genuinely, like wherever you want. Everything that AEW does isn't great, but I will say, out of all companies, they are the most receptive to bullying. They are. Great example, right? Mina Shirakawa, when she first—
I knew you were going to say that.
when she debuted in AEW officially, they changed her theme. And I kid you not, by the time the match was over, Tony Khan had been hogtied so bad, he had already switched it over to her old theme and said, he said, yeah, I heard you. He said, I heard y'all.
I remember that.
I heard you. Even too, if you think that Hangman Page won the Owen because of anything other than constant dogpiling, and this is one thing about the AEW fandom that sometimes I hate, but I've learned to appreciate. And here's the thing, no company is perfect. And I'm not saying that AEW is just like this huge moral, like grandstanding in comparison to WWE or anything like that. I'm not saying that at all. But what I will say is that AEW fans are complainers. AEW fans, honest to God, grade A complainers. They complain about
AEW fans and BTS fans. Who do you think would win in a fight?
Oh, BTS fans. Yeah.
You don't think AEW fans
K-pop stands different. K-pop stands, y'all get down. Y'all get down. The wrestling fans, oh no. I don't like my chances. But AEW fans complain about everything. Complain about everything. Dude, if you watch the entire Death Rider saga,
jeez,
man, AEW fans hollered for 40 days and 40 nights. And you know, hey, eventually you just gotta wear them down. I've just seen so many times, and like Tony Khan, one of the people, he tweeted in the middle of the night sometimes, be like, I heard you. Heard you. So yeah, do what you will with that information.
You know, I think the good thing about AEW as well, you have fans that might have been WWE fans growing up and they're trying to figure out, you know, where some of those people that they used to watch when they were growing up. So like a Hurt Syndicate and Adam Copeland, a Christian. I mean, even, you know, people that were kind of in that black and gold area. You have Roderick Strong, you have Kyle O'Reilly, you know, you have Marina Shafir. You have all these wrestlers that are still familiar to people that might have been watching wrestling in the 90s, 2000s, or maybe they started with the NXT Black and Gold era. They can still find that comfort wrestler within AEW.
Absolutely. My favorite wrestler growing up was Edge. Like, and when he returned to WWE, I was excited, but like by the time like he really was wrestling semi full time again in WWE, I kind of like had already started to fall out of like watching WWE full time, but like obviously I was really happy for him, like just to be wrestling again, because I remember, man, that day he retired, they had to check on me. I don't know, how old was I was a teenager.
You had to be a teenager, yeah, because you're a little bit younger than me. Yeah,
I remember exactly what I was. They had to check on me.
You know what? It's like what people say. You remember where you were when Michael Jackson died. You remember where you were when Edge retired.
Girl. Woo. So I actually ended up being in the building the night he debuted in AEW. So I was at Wrestle Dream. And so seeing him has been really awesome for me. What's really cool is that I think about, that's how I can tell like I've really grown as a wrestling fan. Of as much as like I've enjoyed seeing him, the coolest part of AEW still continues to be like the young talent, you know, for me, of like, you know, the people who are coming up the pipeline. Of I love the fact that, and sometimes I think like they don't have a choice, but what I do love about it is that like they can't get stuck in the past, because there is no past. They're a 6-year-old company, right? Like, yeah, so you can't get tripped up in the nostalgia of it all. And even these people who were familiar on WWE, even they have to still rebrand themselves, you know, because this is a completely different. And so that is what I find really fresh. I think especially in an entire society right now, from movies to music, everything is so nostalgia driven and reboot city and things like that. Like, I want my wrestling to be fresh. I want to see different people in the world title picture. You know, I want to see people under the age of 35. I want to see the future take hold. Like, you know, I think a lot of times in wrestling, we say this person next up and this person next up, then 5 years go by and they still in the same position.
Yeah.
I like seeing upward mobility in my wrestling. You can look at AEW, especially if you've been watching since the start, and you can look at guys like Hangman Page and MJF, Darby Allin, and you can say like they are in a significantly different position than they were 6 years ago, you know?
Agreed.
And you can't say that in every company. You genuinely can't. Like, you know, they have genuinely grown where they are, star power, even like somebody like Toni Storm, look at her now. Athena, look at her now. Mercedes, look at her now. Like Willow Nightingale was wrestling on Dark 2.5 years ago. And like now she's the first woman in Anarchy in the arena. Chris Statlander blew out both knees, you know, was one of the original people, like, you know, and is now like the backbone of the division. People who might not have been there on day one, like I think Swerve is a really good example of, you know, coming over from NXT. I remember when he got signed, people were like, why are they making such a big deal out of this? They wheeled him out on, what was that, Revolution? And they were just like, oh yeah, we signed Swerve.
Yeah, I remember that.
And
he just walked down, he walked to the back.
I was like,
they played his theme and we were like, okay.
He's like, okay. And then, like, you know, he ends up in a tag team and it's just like, okay. And then eventually,
yes,
he's world champion. We've seen legitimate stars be built and grow.
Let's move over to TNA. They've also been known as Impact Wrestling previously. This was a direct competitor, or kind of a direct competitor, with WWE for the longest time before AEW started. They used to be on Spike. They had AJ Styles, they had Frankie Kazarian, they had, oh my God, they had so many people. They had the Beautiful People, they had Samoa Joe, they had Abyss, they had so many people on their roster who have now gone to different companies. You know, we have some that are in WWE, we have some that are in AEW, but now TNA is in this partnership with WWE. So I want to make sure that is known for people that are looking for the wrestling alternatives. If you're watching TNA, there is a chance that you are still supporting WWE because their talent is going to be on there. Obviously, you can't really control that, but that is something that you should keep in mind if you're like, you know what, I'm going full cold turkey with WWE. I don't want to support them anymore. I know you said that you grew up watching TNA. Let's talk a little bit about it. Who were some of the wrestlers that you enjoyed watching? What were some of the eras that you enjoyed? Because I mean, I loved the Beautiful People, but looking back now, I'm like, oh.
Yeah, same. Yeah. No, same. I loved the Beautiful People. I loved the entire Knockouts division, like Gail Kim, Awesome Kong.
They had some incredible battles.
And I think for me personally, it was so interesting because like I started watching wrestling at a time where I never got to experience Jacqueline or Jazz, but I got to experience Miss Jackie Moore. So that's how I knew Jacqueline, you know, as Miss Jackie Moore in TNA. With James Storm. Oh, I loved Beer Money. Loved Beer Money. LAX, Motor City Machine Guns. I think Kaz was probably like one of my first crushes growing up. Like I had a huge crush on Kaz. I loved AJ Styles, Samoa Joe, Christopher Daniels. It's so much stuff of like, I remember when Ron the Truth Killings.
Oh, yes.
Ron the
Pac-Man Jones.
It's the Pat-Man. It's the Pat-Man Jones. Like, you know what? I should have known then who I was going to end up becoming. Because truly, I think I loved TNA more than I loved WWE at that time. And I was a hardcore WWE fan. But it was so different. And I used to get so angry sometimes when I would go to like a Walmart or a Target and like the action figures and they would never have TNA stuff. I'm like, why don't they have TNA stuff? Like I didn't get it at that point because in my mind, it was just as big to me. Like, you know, those things, especially I would say like with the knockouts of, I was never, I'm gonna be honest, I never really clicked with the Divas era. Like it wasn't really for me. Not a huge, I respect like obviously the situation that they were put in. And like, there were a few people like, you know, that I was into, but like, the Divas era was not really my thing. I preferred much more the men's wrestling. And if it wasn't for TNA, I don't think I'd be much into women's wrestling altogether. And seeing what the knockouts were doing at that time, like that really changed everything for me. And it showed me that it's not that I didn't like women's wrestling. I just didn't like the way that it was being presented to me.
Yeah, that makes sense.
And I think also it makes sense. I was 8 years old. Like, I'm gonna be honest, like when you are like 8, 9 years old, and when your entire, I think, perspective of women's wrestling is Playboy covers and bra and panties matches, it's hard to see wrestling as a space for women to be anything other than objects. And that's something even like in adulthood that I've wrestled with a lot of, you know, how I feel about the Divas era, because as a woman, I realized like I'm so proud of them for, you know, making lemonade out of their lemons. That wasn't easy. And it did end up laying the groundwork for so many things for people to be able to get out of that eventually. Also, from the perspective of when we're talking about women's wrestling, like I'm not going to sit here and pretend like that was significantly competitive in comparison to a lot of the other wrestling that has existed. And so TNA really kind of changed a lot of that for me, being like seeing the knockouts what they were doing, like they were kicking ass. And even too, as I get into, you know, Japanese wrestling later in life, and I get to know more about these women, like, you know, especially Awesome Kong and the career she had in Japan and what she was doing over there, and people like who were making appearances like Hamada. And it just gave me even more appreciation for what they were doing at that time. And I don't think that they get a lot of the credit that they deserved for truly keeping North American women's wrestling, the wrestling part, alive. This is a direct delineation. Like what we see now, it really comes from that TNA knockout era where they were doing it Shimmer and places like that. Because WWE wasn't serious for real. They were just playing. They wasn't serious.
I feel like they got serious once Natalya came in. Once Victoria really was not doing the lingerie and all of that. She was with Vince's Devils for a while, and then Melina and Beth Phoenix. You had to bring in women like that to kind of go head to head with like a Candice Michelle or a Tori Wilson, who they were the eye candy, but it really taught them that they needed to excel their game to be active competitors. Because the whole Candice Michelle thing now, we're not going to get into that. But back then, you know, she was eye candy. She was a Playboy model. And then she started training and she was a women's champion. She had to increase her wrestling knowledge to fit in because they were moving past that Divas era. Okay, we're going to put them on TV in bra and panties all the time or have them do mud matches. So I think WWE was trying, you know, kind of in that era, but we were in the trenches.
We were hell. It took even years after that to even kind of establish some type of baseline. You start hiring wrestlers instead of models, but you're still also hiring models, you know?
Yeah.
And so like a lot of times those things just don't mix. It was just such a process. Even too, like Natalya, she immediately gets shoehorned into a position where she's now training. Like she's now having to train fellow wrestlers because there was no NXT at that point. I tell people all the time, before there was a developmental, she was the developmental.
Yep.
She was training all of these girls. All of these girls who came from model background. She was the performance center.
Her and Fit Finlay.
Absolutely. She was the performance center. She was doing that. North American women's wrestling is just such a, WWE did a lot for it, and it also did the most damage to it all at the same time. And I think like we have to be able to hold those two truths. With TNA specifically, TNA did more for it than just about anybody else. But at the same time, they never were able to establish the foothold that they needed to, I think, get the credit for it in the long run. It's one of those things like if you were there, you know. But if you weren't there, the revisionist history, you'll probably never know.
Let's talk about Lucha Libre. We have CMLL and we also have AAA. So AAA is also with WWE. WWE purchased AAA. So you're going to see a lot of WWE wrestlers that are in the company now. I think Dominic Mysterio, they want him to be a big face in the company now. And you'll also see some crossover of AAA superstars or wrestlers on WWE television. CMLL, they currently kind of partner with AEW. So you'll see their wrestlers on their programming. They've done an incredible job of really looping them in and introducing them to their audience that might not be familiar with Lucha Libre.
I'll be honest, from my personal, even before AAA was bought by WWE, I wasn't watching AAA because, in my opinion, mostly scrubs. There are a few people like who I think like are real stars, but like AAA was on like a massive decline like in those last couple of years because they were like also getting a lot of AEW talent that they had been working with. Like Kenny Omega was working over there. Penta. Oh my God. Penta had this, incredible mask versus mask match at Triple Mania a few years ago versus Villano 3. And it still, the visual of him bloody holding that mask is still one of my favorite wrestling photographs ever. But after a while, I think once the AEW stuff get muddy and like they weren't bringing in a lot of people, they just, honestly, a lot of the talent just doesn't particularly move me, except for that King El Hijo del Dr. Wagner Jr. I hope he's having an amazing day. He is signed to AAA, but he was in Noah for a few years, in Pro Wrestling Noah in Japan. And so I followed his entire run in Japan. He was the longest reigning GHC national champion. He ended up becoming the first Mexican-born GHC heavyweight champion. Incredible wrestler. I hope that he has an amazing day. Who else do I like? Psycho Clown is a legend. That's really about it.
Well, I mean, you have the Kingo over there. He worked with AEW a couple times.
The Kingo, them knees player. No, he's had several injuries recently.
He has, yeah.
And so he's still a good wrestler. I'm not going to lie and say that he's not, but it's definitely not the what you saw when he wrestled Kenny that first time. I'll tell you that.
Oh yes, I do remember. That was crazy.
And also too, like to have that many surgeries so young I just really hope that he's protecting his body because I will say the Kingo was giving everybody the full experience. He was going to the Indies, giving y'all the full experience. He was
I know. He was on GCW a couple times.
Man,
I was like, holy shit.
You got to learn to start giving them the house show experience. You can't give them to it all like that. You got to start preserving yourself, player. But maybe I hope that he starts to do so. But yeah, I will say, even as somebody who doesn't watch AAA, who doesn't watch WWE, this Dominic and AAA thing, it's a huge deal. It's huge. It's special. I will myself probably end up going watch the clips afterwards of it, of the things that his father did in that promotion. It's huge. I won't even dispute that. Like, it's huge. And if they're able to get that AAA Mega Championship on him, that alone is going to be huge. CMLL is the big dogs in Mexico. They are the oldest wrestling promotion ever. They are about to celebrate, 93 years?
Wow.
93. They are honestly one of the most successful wrestling promotions in the world. They are packing out Arena Mexico just about every single Friday night. They have an incredible cast of rotating talent. So many stars: Mystico, Mascara Dorada, Zandokin Jr., Neon.
I know Beast Mortos has been there before.
Bandito has been over there again, absolutely just killing it. There's some cool veterans. Last night I watched Blue Panther versus Ultimo.
I saw clips from that.
And it was excellent. I love old man Graps. Like, I live for that. They have smaller wrestlers. They have like Kimalito, who's a huge part of the culture there. The women have really, stepped up. You have Zoices, Persephone, who I think is amazing, La Catalina, Reina Isis. There's just so many people, and it's really never the same thing every week. It's constantly rotating it out, and now like they have, this relationship with AEW. And honestly, Mexico is just much more geographically easier, to get talent over back and forth. And so you could see somebody on Dynamite on Wednesday, CMLL on Friday, back for Collision on Saturday, just because it's that easy. MJF is the current CMLL, a world light heavyweight champion. Really great rivalry with Mystico. And so CMLL is great. Like, they have 3 different tiers. I will say though, the most expensive tier is expensive. It's $35 a month. That's why I was really out of CMLL for a while, because I was just like, I'm not paying for this, bro. Like, I'd pay for so many streaming services. But when Grand Slam Mexico and all that stuff was happening, and they did like the show CMLL versus AEW Ring of Honor, and then they did Fantastica Mania, New Japan, AEW Ring of Honor, and Rev Pro, I was like, fine, I'm going to bite the bullet. And I would listen, and most people, I know like some AEW fans, they got it for that month and then like they canceled afterwards. Actually, let it renew. It's such a great value. What I will say, yes, are you paying $35 a month? Absolutely. But one thing about CMLL is that they're doing at minimum 3 shows a week. 3 shows a week, and they are all high quality. Versus on that flip side, you paying $35 for one pay-per-view a month. from a quality perspective, you're getting your bang for your buck. And then they have like smaller tiers too for you to get like certain shows. Like I think the cheapest is $9.99, and then there's one like I think that's like $24.99. And so I haven't regretted it. I believe that international wrestling is amazing. Like I believe that alternative international wrestling is honestly the best wrestling in the world. As a wrestling fan, like it was important for me to really kind of put my money where my mouth is. And also like I don't like not knowing things. Like I said, I have major FOMO. I get FOMO really bad. I'm not an expert on Japanese wrestling, but I'm much more well-versed in that. But I do realize like one major hole in my game is lucha. Me as a creator, I constantly want to get better. And so that was really important for me. But CMLL is where it's at. But I know that WWE, like they're streaming like all these AAA shows on YouTube too. So like it's super accessible if that's something like
right. Let's wrap it up with independent wrestling promotion. So it seems like every state has their own indies. You think about California, Nevada area, you know, you have your Future Stars of Wrestling here in Vegas. You have West Coast Pro. You have Prestige Wrestling. You have GCW that tours all the time. But, you know, I think about some of these other promotions as well. And even with that, you know, you have different types of wrestling at these shows. So like GCW, I feel like is more for your death matches. You know, if you're looking for those light tubes, the tables, the glass, the fire, all of that, you're going to get that at GCW. But if you look at like a West Coast Pro or an FSW, you know, you might find some talent on the show that are still kind of training, still kind of trying to get their footwork right. You also might find some talent that have been recently released from an AEW or a WWE, putting their feelers out in the independent scene. You're going to find WWE ID talents on some of these shows as well. So I know a lot of people, once the WWE brought back Brock last week, they were like, okay, you need to start watching independent wrestling. But I feel like all along, everyone should start watching independent wrestling. Absolutely. This is where you're going to see some of the stars that are going to be in WWE, AEW, you know, Ring of Honor, Impact, etc. in the next couple of years. I think of a Maya World. I think of Johnny Robbie. I think of Ice Williams he's a WWE ID talent. But I think of all these different wrestlers that you can definitely tune in to watch and see their growth and progression by watching them in the indies.
Yeah. First, I would say Rev Pro. And Rev Pro is kind of weird because Rev Pro is kind of technically indie, but it's also kind of like the major for the UK also at the same time. Rev Pro, you are definitely going to see people who are going to eventually be signed. Michael Oku's over there, Luke Jacobs, Danny Luna came out of there, Alex Windsor came out of there. Will Ospreay came out of there. For me, that was my first indie show I've ever went to, crazily enough. I think that they're definitely worth following, especially now, so much stuff happening. You know, Mercedes is the undisputed British women's champion. And also, Rev Pro's anniversary weekend is also on Forbidden Door weekend. So you are just about guaranteed you will see some AEW New Japan talent probably hanging out around there. And I know they're doing a 2-day event this year. But that aside, in the US, I come from a state that doesn't have a huge indie scene. So I completely relate to the struggle. South Carolina doesn't have a huge indie scene. However, other states do. And also streaming has made things a lot more possible to like watch other stuff. So like I watch West Coast Pro when I can. I watch Prestige when I can. Deadlock Pro actually runs in North Carolina and is super popular. I think those are really cool. Like I mentioned earlier, Athena's doing MPX, Metroplex Wrestling. And, you know, for women's wrestling, there aren't a lot of women's wrestling indies. And so when there are those type of shows, definitely support. Wrestling Revolver does a women's wrestling tournament every year, and it's super cool. I've watched it. Marina Shafir and Billy Starks wrestled in the finals one year, and Renee Paquette was on commentary, and so was Veda Scott. I think John Moxley helped produce that and put that together. There's also a lot of times like wrestlers, TV wrestlers, like they're actually producing like a lot of indie stuff like in their free time for fun, which I think is cool. Yeah. Will Ospreay is currently like producing over at Pro Wrestling Eve, which is a British indie. It's a women's wrestling promotion. I also recommend like supporting them. Like I said, Chris Statlander is currently their international champion. They're now bringing in Sky Blue and Julia Hart. If I'm not mistaken, I think Nyla Rose is going to wrestle over there soon too. Whenever like their big women's shows do it, I know West Coast Pro does Queen of the Indies every year. That's really important. You know, make sure like to support that. Who else? House of Glory does good stuff. GCW, like everybody feels one way or another about them. Like, they're not my favorite promotion, but they're the one promotion that's going to run during everybody's big weekend. So like,
right.
Also they do a lot of combo stuff, right? So like, I probably won't go to like a GCW single show, but like during Mania week, they're doing with DDT and TJPW. And so like
that's JCW as well.
Yeah. So, like, so that's my speed. Knowing your options when you travel. I went to WrestleMania week and didn't go to anything WWE related. And I had a blast. I went to 9 shows. What I love about those type of weeks, and like to this point, like I've been to All In week, I've been to Wrestle Kingdom week, I've been to WrestleMania week, is very rarely will you ever have opportunities like that where you'll have that much diversity of wrestling at your fingertips. Take advantage of it.
Thank you, Lyric, so much for joining me. I feel like we have definitely laid a good foundation for the people who may be looking to kind of look at an alternative when it comes to wrestling. Where can the people keep up with you on social media and check out your articles?
You can find me at Lyric Wrestling on Twitter and Instagram, and I will tweet out all of my stuff. The links in my bio will also have it. And you can find me at Lyric Swinton on YouTube. And every Wednesday, myself and Danny from Black Girl Wrestling, we do the Dynamite Diaries, which is our Dynamite after show. And we barely talk about Dynamite. But, hey, it is what it is. And also any video interviews I do, it all goes up on there as well.
Thank you for tuning in to another episode of Wrestling Wind Down. You can find all of our other episodes available wherever you listen to your podcasts, including Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google Play, and iHeartRadio. We are on Twitter and Instagram at WWDCAST. We also have our official merch store, which you can find at shop.wrestlingwinddownlv.com. Let us know what you thought about this episode. What was your favorite part? Until next time, enjoy your wine and, of course, enjoy your wrestling. Cheers!